Hello there and welcome back to the channel. This is NerdWorld, and in today's episode we're journeying to the 32nd century and the United Earth Defense Force vessel of an unknown class. Kind of looks like a giant tooth in space. This vessel was developed by humanity for the defense of humanity. Humanity first. Die all Xeno. Probably wasn't the reason. But anyway, like, share, subscribe, comment down below. If you know anything about this vessel, I don't know, because there is very scant information on the ship, but here today we're going to break down what we do know. With all that said, let's get into this video. Well, alright then. Let's get out of the way what we don't know. We don't know what the ship was called. We don't know what individual ships were called. We don't know when the class was commissioned. We're not sure exactly what kind of firepower it uses. We sort of know what powers it. And yeah, everything else is going to be supposition as well, pretty much. These vessels were built as a means of defending Earth and its surrounding territories for the interests of humanity post-burn. After the burn, Earth decided to sever itself from the Greater Federation, become an independent state once again. Of course, this meant separating itself from Starfleet, its own historical navy, and this resulted in the creation of the United Earth Defense Force, a fleet and organization tasked solely with the defense of Earth. This vessel was the 32nd century culmination of that design philosophy. Like other ships of the era, not just Federation but others, but notably Federation Starfleet ships, the vessel featured detached sections of the hull, particularly the nacelles, as well as other parts, and it looks like, and this is only looks like, the vessel has the ability to reconfigure its general appearance, reshaping the functionality of the different components of these sort of floating sections. Other notable things that we can take away from the ship's hull configuration and design is it is definitely a sturdy design. It has not got any unnecessary greebling or other strange little components sticking out away from the hull. Also, the outer portions of the hull have no visible things like shuttle bays. They don't have obvious weak points. There are no windows, or very few of them. They are mostly contained, what few there are, in the arched section in the center of the ship, where it is protected by the obviously much thicker and stronger outer hull, and we can only assume that by the 32nd century this vessel's hull, although maybe still titanium, was probably a much more advanced laminate version, very, very strong. The vessel sacrificed scientific and other research gathering capabilities with very little emphasis on exploration in favor of combat systems. It was a stripped down starship, not unlike vessels of the 24th century such as the Defiant class. It shows in the general design of the ship that it was not built for exploration. Humanity stopped going forth and trying to explore and basically tasked these vessels solely with the defense of Earth and its massive, impressive shield grid. These vessels were noted for having very powerful shields, very strong hulls, and seemed to be armed with at least quantum torpedoes, but it was probably armed with other energy-based or possibly other exotic forms of weapon system, which we have yet to see the vessels utilize. Everything right down to the uniforms of the crew had also changed. Starfleet uniform, although was descended of Earth naval military traditions, even in the 32nd century Starfleet still functional out there, the Earth naval uniform had reverted back to a more military form than it had been previously, than the NASA-like jumpsuits of the 22nd century to the Patak uniforms of the 23rd century to the child's uniforms and pajamas of the 24th century. These were very different uniforms indeed, much more functional and military looking. So there we have it. We know these ships, things again we do know they were definitely warp capable. Exactly what the maximum ceiling of that ability was, we don't know. We do know that from shows such as Star Trek Prodigy that Earth would have had access to much more advanced and exotic forms of warp propulsion system. Why after the burn these things weren't explored more extensively is probably a subject for another video, but let's just say the vessel has some kind of matter-antimatter reactor, we think, and that powered its warp driver, which definitely had as these two smaller components on either side of it, the wings, sort of, were the warp nacelles, and worked like warp nacelles had always worked, except they weren't directly attached to the main hull of the ship. But as I said, the maximum sailing speed of this vessel was completely unknown. It also seemed to on some level utilize some form of stealth capability, as these vessels were not easily detected initially by the USS Discovery upon its approach to Earth. I don't think that means cloaking technology, but it could just mean some form of stealth sheathing of the vessel against sensors. And again, there we have it. The Great Space Canine of the Earth Defense Force. It was one of the very few vessels seen operated by the United Earth in the 32nd century. Although they probably did have other vessels, this was very likely the capital ship and the mainstay of their navy, which means it would have had some auxiliary capabilities, but that is, again, conjecture. They seem to build these vessels primarily for defense. It is entirely possible they were built like a Defiant class with cabins and barracks rather than crew quarters, but again, we just don't know enough about the interior workings of the ship yet. One day in the future, when we know more about these vessels, when or if humanity properly rejoins the Federation and we learn more about them, hopefully we can do a more extensive breakdown of these ships. But for now, that's pretty much all we know. They're very powerful, they're very big, but pretty much nothing else. They were used in the defense of Earth against the Jovian Raider and against any other possible assault on Earth. But that's, again, gotta reiterate, all we pretty much know. So with that said, we're reaching the end of this video. Tell me in the comments below if I've missed anything, if there's something I can't find in my research or something I've said in the show that I have missed. And like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. If you made it all the way to the end of this one, thank you for watching, and bye bye.